Hey folks, General Manager Tony Mazzucco here for our weekly COVID-19 update for the town of Norwood. We'll be getting started in just a few moments. This week, since I seem to be wearing a different shirt every week, brought to you by Norwood Town Hall staff. So kudos to the staff at Town Hall who have been doing their job all through COVID. And we went 5 months with the building barely being open. And kudos to all of them for all the time they come in early and stay late and get the town's business done. So we'll be beginning in just a minute with some COVID updates, where our numbers are. We'll talk about Halloween again, and then we've gotten some questions in over the course of the week, and we'll talk about them as well. So hello to everyone joining us. Hi, Catherine, and everyone else that comes to join us every week. We are just about to get going. Let me make sure my phone is off. Hi, Kate. All the K's are joining us. All right. We'll jump right into our numbers now that people are logging on for COVID. So I report this a little differently every week, but I think the easiest way to start is we are still in the yellow, which is both good and bad. Our actual case count per 100,000 has come down. Hi, Michelle. Thank you for joining us. So we're at 5.2 per 100,000. Last week we were at 6.7, so we're down a bit from last week. The week before was 5. The week before that, 5.2. The week before that, 6.7. So we seem to be hovering between 5 and 7 as a number. Now that's both good and bad. It's good because what it seems to indicate is now going on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 weeks in, our numbers really haven't changed. They did go up about 6 weeks ago, but now they seem to have flatlined within that area. We're kind of ping-ponging, is the term Segal uses, in between those numbers. So what that could indicate is that we've reached a normalcy of our numbers, where for the level of activity that's going on in the community, it's excuse me, of course I silenced my phone and I get a call, so it was good that I did that. So this might be sort of what that new normal is for a level of activity. The state as a whole has been trending upwards in most areas, but there's still a lot of pockets of some particular challenges, and we'll go over that in just a minute. 2,240 tests in the last 14 days. So we are still punching out an incredibly high testing number. We've been at around 1,500 tests in a 2-week period for a while consistently. That jumped up to over 2,000 tests, and that number is still sort of staying there. So that's a good thing. One of the positives in our numbers this week is our positivity rate is 1.2%. That's actually among the lowest it's been. The state is at, I believe, 3.5%. So for the couple weeks ago, our positivity rate was higher than the state. It's now gone in the inverse. For some reason, we tend to go in the opposite direction of the state. I don't know if it's just because we tend to be a little ornery in Norwood sometimes, but our numbers seem to be going up when everyone else's are going down. Our numbers seem to be going down when everyone else is going up. So I guess it's really a question of a glass half empty or a glass half full. If the glass is half empty, we're always behind the state. If the glass is half full, we're always ahead of the curve. And in this case, I would hope the state's numbers would match ours, which is a positivity rate going down, but still having an overall high testing rate. I have here, yes, the state at 3.54%. We've had a couple of issues in a few communities, not Norwood. So Dedham was red. They're now back down to yellow, which is a good thing. It's an indication they had a spike and their numbers are coming down. Westwood and Canton still in yellow. A lot more towns, including the city of Boston, joined the red count, if you will, this week. But we really want everyone to understand that just because our numbers go red and ours haven't yet in Norwood doesn't necessarily mean that anything's going to change. And there's a couple of reasons why. We talked about Rentham had a spike because of a nursing home. Dedham had a bunch of kids partying, and there were a lot of positive cases that came out of that. 2 more towns that have jumped into the red out of nowhere. One of them is Middleton. Well, there's a state prison in Middleton. The town has 1 case. The prison has a certain number of cases that are accrued to that town's numbers. As a result, they're in the red, but reasonably we know that there's no actual increase in the spread within that community. North Andover, I believe, is home to Merrimack College, and there was a big issue there with kids going to a party, and there were a lot of positive tests there. So the community level spread, and I'll be honest, I don't know North Andover that well, and I don't know Merrimack College and how integrated it is in the community, but those cases were tied towards the college. So the town may make the decision that they're not necessarily making any changes in that those numbers. Some folks from different agencies are saying that indoor dining is leading to an increase in case count. We're not seeing that in our numbers locally. There's nowhere we can tie it to except for the indoor dining is, I guess it depends on who you go out with. And I'll give you an example. A family of 4 goes out to dinner. the likelihood that you're going to catch COVID from somebody else at the restaurant or the nurse. Nurses aren't in restaurants unless they're eating there, or the waiter or the hostess or the manager walking around. It's very minimal. And we haven't, there's no cases we've had where nobody has any idea where they got COVID from. But that family of four is likely to infect only themselves. However, if you go out to dinner and you've got four other people with you or three other people with you, it's not the fact that you're out to eat and that it's indoor dining. It's the fact that four people are together and maybe one person who's not part of your household ends up having COVID and they're likely to spread it to you. That risk would be the same if the four of you went to one person's house and sat close together and decided to have dinner or have a couple of drinks. So you could say that it's encouraging people to do that. As more people go out to eat, there's going to be more spread. Certainly, the more activity in the community, the more spread there's going to be. But there's nothing about the dining process that's inherently risky. Or if you're a married couple and you're going out to dinner, you could do it 7 nights a week and you're not likely to, there's really next to no risk there. I don't want to say there's no risk, but there's next to no risk as a result of you just going out to eat. We talked last week about you go out for a drink and they're supposed to serve food with it. The consumption of the alcohol or the food isn't what they're trying to prevent by the requirement of the serving of food. It's just if you go to a bar, making sure that you're not mingling around with other people is the primary thing. You know, you have a few drinks, your droplets increase, you talk a little louder. The louder you talk, the more your droplets tend to go. You're mingling around and stuff. Certainly there's an increase. But having one beer versus one cheeseburger, neither one has an inherent risk or an inherent increase in the ability of COVID to spread. I think as everyone knows, the state released some new guidelines. The number of people at a table in a restaurant has gone up to 10. I'm a little surprised they did that because that's more likely to encourage larger groups going out. And well, now I can have 9 friends out for my birthday and we're all going to go out to dinner at one place. So I was a little surprised they did that, but it is allowed. They are allowing bar seating at a restaurant. But if a couple goes out and sits at the bar, the two of them sitting there, there still needs to be 6 feet in between them and the next couple. My guess is that's probably a give me to some places that maybe don't have the best setup where they can't fit a lot of tables. It doesn't mean you can go and sit at a bar and just drink. And it doesn't mean you can go sit in an open area and walk up to the bar and get a drink. That's what we need to try to prevent. That's what we're really focusing a lot of our enforcement on. It really is making sure that it's in a controlled environment where you're seated somewhere and a waiter or a waitress is bringing you your food, your drinks, etc. So overall, our numbers continue to be in the yellow, but I'd say they're positive overall. We may end up seeing a spike. We may not. It's important that everyone continue to wear your masks, practice good hygiene, social distance when you can, and if you have the availability to, if you don't feel well, stay home, work from home, don't go out. And I guess for a lot of us, we need to redefine when we decide that. Now, I'll be the first to admit I'm always someone to claim that I'm sick when I don't want to go out somewhere. So maybe it's a little bit easier for me than someone else. But if you're thinking maybe I'm getting a cold, maybe I'm not getting a cold, if it's not a critical event, by all means, just try to stay home and see how you feel the next day. I did this earlier in the week. I said, ooh, am I coming down with a cold or is it allergies? I can't really tell because I don't really get allergies very often. Decided to take a morning off. The next day I woke up by 11 o'clock. I felt fine. No temperature check. No temperature. So, and I'm fortunate that I have a job where that's a possibility for me to do. But it's about being more cautious than normal. So that's it for our COVID updates. We'd be happy to take any questions on COVID updates. I'll jump into the hospital because Joan has asked a question. So in some ways, nothing has changed with the hospital. The building needs to undergo a major reconstruction, which is probably at least 3/4, if not the entire hospital. It's probably a 2 to 3 year period for that to happen. I do know that there was a meeting this week and Stewart is finally at the point where they're waiting for their insurance company to effectively tell them this is how much we're going to pay to redo and rebuild, which will let them sort of path out how they're going forward. The initial assessments of damage in the building, the damage was much greater than it looked at initially. I mean, I'll tell you, I know some folks are frustrated that, we thought the ER would be up in 2 or 3 weeks, and then the hospital said, well, 4 weeks, and now they're saying we don't know what we're going to be able to get up and done. The night that we were there, we were thinking, okay, they'll get it drained out and they'll be up in maybe 24, 48 hours, and we'll be bringing these patients back in. So as you get more and more into the damage, that's what they're finding. I want to talk about the ER for a minute because there are a couple of options that Stewart is looking at. There's a few challenges. One is the existing building is so damaged, and it's really the mechanicals of the building. So there's no HVAC plant for the building, no electrical plant that can feed the whole facility. The other problem is that gray water, so that's water from storm runoff, has gotten into almost the entire building. It made its way in through the HVAC system, so the heating and the ventilating system. It has touched literally every part of the building. The problem is once that's touched a portion of a building, it's a hospital and it has to be built and safely designed to a standard where that can never happen again. There can never be the potential for mold. I mean, you think about operating in an ER or an operating room or somebody recovering from a serious injury, you can't have the possibility that mold is going to grow there because gray water has touched parts of that building. Now, why don't they just clean it all up and slap it back together? In Massachusetts, as well as anywhere that follows the International Building Code, which is most states in the country, when you renovate a building and the total cost of that renovation exceeds 33% of the building, you're supposed to bring that building up to code. Now, there's always a discussion about, is there some flexibility in that? We're at 32%, we're at 34%, is it feasible? The hospital is well over that 33% threshold. So it needs to be reconstructed in a way that meets modern safety codes, remembering that the newest part of the hospital was built in the mid-80s, and the rest of the building being, even though it's been renovated several times, the same would apply to your house. Actually, I don't know if it applies to residential buildings. I'll have to put a caveat on that. So that's sort of the challenge with the amount of work the hospital needs. Now, the existing building where the ER is doesn't have access to a functioning electric and heating and ventilating system. So what they would need to do is to build a temporary utility plant outside the building. So obviously incredibly costly, incredibly disruptive, and that will be basically taking all of the lines, think of it as the electric lines to make it simple, gas, everything else, and moving it out to a temporary plant in the parking lot somewhere. They then have to try to maintain that while tearing down and reconstructing the rest of the building, and then at some point that would have to either move or have to be rebuilt as well and moved around, and you'd have periods with and without an ER. That's challenging. And it just operationally doesn't seem to make any sense to work. The other problem is they've looked at whether they can do an alternate site, and that's not off the table. The problem is getting the cath lab set up for folks who have a heart attack. Now, as we've said here many times, I am not a medical expert, but when you have a heart attack in the area right now, we have to bring you into Boston because we need that cath lab to be able to treat you. Without that, there's almost next to no point in having an ER set up because that's where that sort of life-saving is critical. Now, let's say somebody, and everyone is different, but let's say somebody falls and breaks their leg. You want them treated and stabilized as quickly as possible. But the difference in terms of saving somebody's life with that broken leg versus going into Boston or taking them to Norwood Hospital, not that big of a deal. With a heart attack, it's a huge deal. Seconds save lives. So if they're able to get an ER up and running without a cath lab, you've basically got a glorified extended day. Sorry, my days tend to run into each other. You've basically got a glorified urgent care, which is good. Urgent cares are important. They serve a great need. I've gone to urgent care a couple times myself. But if we're not able to actually use a cath lab as an example, and there's other things there too, there's the CT scans and everything else that are also important, they'd sort of be bringing somebody there and stabilizing them and then shipping them off to a hospital further away, likely in Boston. Sometimes the process of offloading them and then shipping them back, you're not really saving any time. And in some ways, it's almost worse if it's, well, let the EMS service drop you off here. You're there for 45 minutes, and then a transport service comes and picks you up and sends you to Boston. Sometimes it might as well be we just send you right into Boston. That's complicated, and it's, I think, a challenging situation that we're all frustrated with, and we all just want the ER to come back, and we want things to go back the way they were. I'm still convinced, as I was a couple months ago, even though we're almost entering month 4, that what we're going to see at the end of the road with Norwood Hospital is a brand new $200-300 million facility that will serve our community in the region better and will serve us for the next 50, 60, or 100 years down the road. It's just a matter of getting there. Quick side note, my question, it's from, my mug says it's from Busboys and Poets. It's a chain of little restaurants and bookstores in DC that just some of the coolest places in the world if you've never been to one. by all means, I encourage you to go to a Busboys and Poets in DC. They apparently opened in 2007. I swear I went to one in high school, which was before then, and I'm convinced that I did. But they say they opened in 2007 or 2004, so I think there's some confusion there. It's definitely not on my part. You comment here from Jackie about urgent care in Foxborough offers some of these services in a heart attack. There's always little places to get some of these services. It's just that full cath lab. That's what's making the difference between saving somebody's life. So it's a tough situation. There's an urgent care in Walpole. Well, there's now two in Walpole. Well, the one in Norwood moved over the line to Walpole. There's one in Foxborough, and there's one at not Legacy Place, University Ave in Norwood. Sorry, in Westwood as well. So there's quite a few around. Urgent care is very good, but I want to remind everyone we still have an ambulance service and we still have paramedics. So if it's an emergency, call 911. Those paramedics can do wonders, and that's who we need to get to you to get you taken care of as safely as possible. The hospital is for the serious cases, but our paramedics are the they're really like an emergency room on wheels in a lot of ways. So I don't want you to think if all of a sudden you're collapsing because you have chest pains, please don't get in your car and drive yourself to urgent care. By all means, call 911 if you have an emergency. Paramedics will always respond. So we always want to make sure you call 911 if you do need them. Where urgent care is great for is, what some people used to go to the ER for. Maybe you cut yourself and, it's not dramatic, but you probably think you need stitches. You can go to urgent care for that. I go when I get a cold because, as you know, trying to schedule a doctor's appointment sometimes takes a few months or weeks. So you have a cold, you might have the flu or something. Full disclosure, they may have a different process now because of COVID, but those are some of the things that I think urgent care is great for. So, Joan, to your question, what's happening with Norwood Hospital? Everything and nothing. It's no one could have predicted that flood damage on June 28th would cause $50 million of damage to the hospital and take the building out. One analogy I'd like everyone to think about for why it's so frustrating is, let's say you lost your furnace in your house. And the only thing I could do is you couldn't put your furnace back in your basement or wherever it is. You have to basically pipe it out your house to your driveway. And that's the only way you can do it. And then 75% of your house has to get torn down while I still got that line out to that furnace in the house. And it's trying to heat the 25% of the house that may not get torn down until some other time when that portion gets torn down. So it's a perfect storm of really stinky conditions. And we may be looking at a longer timeline without an ER. We're talking with Stuart about setting up a COVID lab, and we talk to him a couple times a week about, when can you get an ER backing up, or when is sort of your timeline for that. And a lot of it does come down to what their insurance company is going to tell them they can go ahead and rebuild and when they can get started. They're averaging, during COVID, they were losing a couple $100,000 a day as a result of not having outpatient services available. The hospital's losses are a couple $1 million a week. So, Stewart's taking it on the chin every day that the hospital's not open as well. So I don't think it's not that there's a lack of desire on their part to get up and running. They're looking to get up and running as soon as they can. The nature of the beast is that it's just very challenging. But continue to call 911 if you do have an emergency. And as we have more updates, again, I know there was a big meeting last week that our inspectors and our fire department were at with the hospital, with their engineers and their consulting engineers, as well as their insurance company and the insurance company's engineers and consultants. It seemed like it was a big consultant fest. Hopefully it doesn't become a super spreader event. But they're going to get a decision hopefully soon. And we've been working with the governor's office to make sure that the state's insurance commissioner is also working with the hospital so that their insurance company gets them a decision soon so they know that they can move forward and they can plot out exactly what to do and where they can do it. So I wish I had a better update for the hospital, but it's another update, non-update for the hospital as the drama and the saga continues to move on. But I'd be happy to take more questions, even though there's not necessarily much more that we have at this time. A couple of other questions we've gotten, and some of these will be pretty quick. I don't know if anyone's seen Dean Street lately. It should be getting paved next week, which means we believe it'll be completed next week, a week or two ahead of time. They've put the top coat down, and I was out there. Question about Dean Street, just perfect timing. Should be actually done next week, a week ahead of schedule. They are, I'll see if I can show a picture to everyone. They are ahead of schedule, and the project has gone well. These were other pictures I had for Dean. Oh no, I apparently didn't. Oh, yep, I'm in the wrong category. That's why I can't find my pictures of Dean Street. So, believe it or not, if you can see, that is all right. This is coming out terrible, so I apologize, everyone. That's Dean Street, all covered up. It's waiting for a little bit of the gravel to be moved, and then the final coat of pavement should be in next week. So it could be next Friday. You could drive over Dean Street. I do want to thank everyone for bearing with us with Dean Street. We know those of you who live in the area, it's been challenging. I prefer to be honest and upfront about these things. I think I said at the very beginning, it's not going to be pleasant because there's no way you can close a road like that and not have it be a major disruption. Although a couple neighbors did tell us on the one hand, they sort of miss the sound of cars going by. They've also now started adjusting to the quiet of no cars going by. So there's always pluses and minuses. So Dean Street is going well, should be up and running next week. You're welcome, Joan. I wish I had a better update. I wish it was, I could just tell the DPW to go build a ER and have one up and running. And, I think Stewart's doing their best, but sometimes big corporations are more bureaucratic than government can be. So Dean Street as well. Thank you everyone for sticking through to Dean Street. It looks like it'll have come in under budget and ahead of schedule. So that's always a good thing when we can do that. I did get a question late last week about Forbes Hill and the process with that. We had gone out to bid. We had actually had 4 bidders bid on the property. And one of the bidders filed a bid complaint, which is not a common process, but part of the procurement process because they thought the top bidder should have been thrown out and they should have been awarded the bid. But then the bidder who was the next highest one thinks they should have been awarded the bid. So we're just waiting for that to get it settled out. And we may either just award it to the second bidder or put the whole property back out to bid because it seems like there is quite a bit of interest in buying the property, which from my perspective means we can get more money for it, which is always my goal for the town. I have the word solar here. We got a question about a year and a half ago. Well, we got the question recently. The town was looking to do a solar field on top of the landfill in Norwood. And we originally paused the project because we were trying to tie a battery storage program into it. That ended up not materializing. Battery storage, not only are the prices getting cheaper and cheaper, they're becoming more common, but there's just such a rush to do it that the wait time was going to be too long. It was going to be complicated. And we just said, we can always add it afterwards. But we believe it'll be in the next month or so, we'll be going out to bid for a solar field on the landfill, and it will be up and running mid to late spring is the estimate now. So we'll be doing, that project is still moving forward. It just got delayed a little bit on our solar. Question from Katie. I'm seeing National Grid markings on a lot of streets. Any chance they are finally fixing some of the unfixed gas leaks? There are a few that are super smelly and they've been like that for years. Yes, we are. So anywhere you see those National Grid gas marks, they're either replacing gas lines or they're addressing specific complaints. If you do think you smell gas, first of all, if you smell gas in your home, leave and call 911 and they'll call the gas station. They are starting to address more of it. They had a slow up of work, a combination of a strike and the Merrimack Valley gas leaks as well, caused a lot of problems. So that slowed up their work. So there's a lot more gas work now coming up into our area, which is both a good and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it means that we're getting more gas lines and more energy efficient. It's bad because it means, and there, of course, the safety issue and the methane issue. It's bad because it means they're tearing up roads. One question we always get is, why does it seem like we built a new road and then the gas company comes along and tears it up? And sometimes, I'll be honest with you, the town does as well. That's never planned. If there's a leak, they have to address the leak. So it could be a brand new coat of blacktop. If there is a leak and it's a safety issue, it has to get addressed. To your larger question, Katie, or point, I should say, about gas, I think the solution is we should all go all electric. I know that for years there was this concern that electric heat would cost people a fortune. Well, if you do it right in your home, you can, it doesn't have to be. I used to live in northern Maine and I had electric heat. And what was great was in my house, it was an apartment I rented. Every room basically had its own zone. I like it warm. I tell people that all the time. If I could make it 77 every day, I would. So when I get home from work, if I was in my living room, I would crank up that heat in the living room and I could roast my living room. And then I know that everyone in the world likes it cold when they go to sleep. I'm the weird opposite. I like it warm when I go to sleep. So I turn the heat down everywhere else and jack up the warmth. So the long-term solution is all electric heat. Mothers Out Front has an action plan with National Grid, Heat, and others, but they don't specify which leaks in mass are up first. Part of that, Katie, is because, and then Doris, I'll get to your question. Um, but the reason it gets sort of bounced around is part of it's when the louder you complain, the more they're apt to get to you. That's part of it is. They're also always having to go and sort of triage where they're going based on what's a higher need. So they may have an actual gas leak, and that causes them, they have to stop and respond to that and get that taken care of and then go somewhere else. Sometimes it's as simple as an example, we had a business that needed a different gas line into one of their buildings downtown, and they were delayed, God, I think 10 or 12 weeks because of the National Grid, because of the strikes and everything else that was going on, and contractors were busy. So they couldn't open up a business until they get the gasoline they need. I reached out to some of those groups about a year ago to start talking about something, because again, I think the solution is if we all look at going all electric, that will take care of the problem altogether. So, whatever street you live on, let's say you live on Railroad Ave here in Norwood and you have a gas pipe running down the street, it's always going to be a gas pipe. It's always going to get old. There's always eventually going to be an issue. It's always going to be methane. Our portfolio is, 20 to 40%, depending on how you want to look at it, is green, and only electricity will ever be truly carbon neutral or carbon free. So we should all move away from gas and to electricity. And to Doris's point there, so her second point, I'll get back to the first one. Sometimes it's prioritized based on, well, where are there urgent repairs, and some of those urgent repairs are somebody is out of gas, or the gas has stopped working, or there's a dangerous leak. So I don't particularly care for some of the larger regulated utilities, although small public-owned utilities like Norwood Light are the best. But that's sometimes why they're sort of kicking the problem around. But the long-term solution is to get off gas as a whole. I know some people love cooking on a gas stove, and if it's not a gas stove, they refuse to cook on it, and that's an issue that we, as a society, will have to at some point deal with. Katie, was heat mass. I actually had reached out to some of those folks about a year ago, and there was some other group, and they never really got back to me about looking at the potential of starting to pitch all electric heat as a better system all over. Doris's question is that all a capped landfill is good for? Solar panels? Question mark. The answer is yes, because you actually shouldn't be going on a capped landfill, because there's a lot of methane that gets released from it. So it's not a great. I know people like to sometimes climb to the top of ours and look out, but they actually aren't supposed to, and they shouldn't. Solar on roofs is a good idea. Why are we considering doing it on land? Doris, I don't know if we can require it on roofs, and I'll be honest with you, rooftop solar on small commercial buildings is nice. If you're actually talking about generating power for the community, you need a lot of land. Capping the entire landfill with solar would, best case scenario, would be just under 1% of the total energy use in the community. So for a lot of buildings, it just doesn't work. I shouldn't say it doesn't work. It works when it makes financial sense to make it work. We also buy power cheaper elsewhere. That's one of the reasons why we don't give the best solar rebates in Norwood, because we buy the power a heck of a lot cheaper elsewhere, because you're buying it, we're able to buy it in bulk. Some homes can do it. We have a lot of older homes that have funky roofs where it doesn't work. I agree 110%, Eileen. I haven't seen you in a while, so I hope you're doing well, but electric's the way we should all be going. You think of downtown, could they throw some solar on 100-year-old roofs? Sure, they could. At the end of the day, you're going to get a handful and a mismatch of panels here and there that, it's good, but I don't want us to, you got to remember that when you build a solar panel, there's also some rare earth minerals that go into it, and there's also some non-renewables that go into the construction of that solar panel. So solar is good. Solar will be truly effective, because it's largely a waste in a lot of places now. It'll be truly effective when battery technology has gotten to the point where we need it to be, so you can store that solar. Because remember, even selling it back to the grid, people think, oh, well, I generated 10 kilowatts of power and I only use 6. Yeah, I sent 6 back to the grid. If that 6 doesn't have anywhere to go, what you've done is generated power and just sent it into nowhere. I always like telling people the electric grid is a fascinating concept. Everyone produces energy and just throws it on the grid, and everyone uses energy. A bunch of contracts get signed, and at the end of the day, if it all works out, then everyone's happy with it. So it's not that we don't encourage solar, but when solar will really take off is when there's a commercially viable battery option for small businesses and for homes. Now, Tesla has some batteries out there. We're looking into another company with some battery programs to test it. That's when solar is truly going to take off. Wind as well, because when they were designed, they're inherently inefficient systems. The wind is blowing, you're generating power. It's not blowing, you're not generating power. Well, it's also while it's generating power, what do you do with the power you don't need? We can talk about how we're going to send that power from Louisiana up to here, but it really doesn't actually make it all that far. So, or at least it only does on paper. So solar will truly, and I know we're getting a little off topic here, but solar will truly come into its own, and wind will as well when battery technology catches up. We're probably 5 to 10 years from that. You're finally starting to see large-scale battery storage projects. I'd like to see our first one in Norwood in the next 5 to 10 years, maybe even less than 5 years. Moderna actually has a small battery storage program, but that's really designed for a facility. So there's an example of somebody that has some solar, but really they tied it into a battery. That's like the other piece that we were missing, where it's like, oh, all right, yeah, solar kind of works, but it goes cloudy for a couple days and it doesn't work, and at night it doesn't work. Well, a battery is the way to make that work. So the solution, all electric and all solar. The other thing is, if we ever truly did move off our fossil fuels, you're still going to need some mass generation of energy, and rooftop solar wouldn't be able to power an entire home's energy use. It would be able to contribute to it because the bulk of your energy use is actually your fuel system. So that's what we really want to do. So referring to new roofs, commercial or new multi-unit apartment complexes, I don't know to what extent we can legally mandate them to put solar on their roof. If you find me a couple of examples of that, we can look into it, but I don't actually think you can do that. I wish we could do more green roofs. They're particularly hard in New England. A few years ago, I traveled to Southeast Asia and was focusing on mainly looking at sustainability. That kind of climate, you can do amazing things. We start planting stuff on roofs here and it all dies in the winter. So Doris, you say setting a good example. A bad financial decision is never a good example because it ultimately hurts you in the long run. So it's a matter of how do I, and even when it's solar, so do I buy solar for you from 8 cents when I can buy solar over here from 4 cents? What happens to that differential? It gets tacked on to somebody else. Now, who it gets tacked on to is the entire rate paying base. So who suffers is the people who can't afford solar. So it's a catch-22. We always have to balance our environmental concerns with making sure we're not pursuing them so aggressively that we're hurting folks who don't have the money. And again, the more we have battery storage issues, that problem goes away. That cost differential no longer becomes an issue when you have battery storage issues. Not to mention, again, we got to be cognizant that solar panels also contain rare earth minerals. So in a sense, building them now, even though building them now has gotten us to where we are, where we're now developing battery technology and the cost has come down in the technology. I mean, solar technology is better than it was 3 years ago, let alone 5 or 10 years ago. That's one of the reasons we're able to do the landfill is the systems they've built and designed to be able to work on a capped landfill make it financially feasible to be able to do it. Throwing away money on a system that's not very efficient is not really helping the environment when it's let's get a whole bunch of materials and build this thing to, yes, generate a little bit of renewable energy, but at the end of the day, there's a cost that goes into building and maintaining those panels. So it's all about benefiting and looking at sort of the total picture of sustainability. Recycling is good, but we don't want to just recycle and say, well, I'm recycling, so now I'm going to buy twice as much. So it's all about balance in looking at our environmental issues as we move forward. And again, the more electricity we use, the better it is. I don't want to say the more electricity you use. Efficiency is important. The more we can move towards being all electric, the better it is for everyone in general. So that's brief update on solar. And sorry, we got a little off topic there, but some great discussion. So we're continuing to move forward. We have speaking of energy, we have a electric vehicle charging station at the Norwood Light headquarters on Access Road. We will be installing a couple of them downtown next spring. We made sure we built in the piping to do it, I believe, in the theater lot and in the Babel's parking lot, or I think we officially call it the Talbot lot, but we refer to it as Babel's. So next spring, we should have vehicle charging stations coming to downtown. And incidentally, I encourage you to check out the Light Department's website. They have a whole lot of different incentives for electric vehicles, whether you're purchasing a vehicle and you live here in Norwood. So I encourage everyone to do that. The election is coming up, and we are doing a lot of early voting, and we're going to be doing a lot of messaging around the election. We've gotten some information out on our social media sites, and we're going to continue getting that out on public access. We are going to be doing robocalls, and we might even be doing some social media sort of ads or promoted posts on the election information to get all that information out there. We'll try to see if we can get it in the comments today, but we do have it on our Facebook page and our other sites. So we're going to encourage everyone, whether you want to do early voting or whether you want to do mail-in voting or just show up at the polls in November and vote. We always encourage everyone to vote. We think this is going to be a historic election where certainly we had a great turnout for the primary. We hope we have the same for this election. Which reminds me, the clerk's office is, town hall's open by appointment only. The clerk's office is only open until around 11 o'clock by appointment only. Most of the business, if you just call them or send them an email, they'll be able to take care of you. Yes, Catherine, just email the clerk's office, clerk@norwoodma.gov, and they will take care of anything you need. They're only available for appointment until about 11:30 each morning. I think I'm going to say 11 to be safe because they are in election mode. And the one challenge with absentee voting, mail-in voting, early voting is that the amount of work it places on the same people in the clerk's office doubles, triples, quadruples. If you, Michelle, if you just email us, we can, the way that, so sort of the way an appointment for that would work is you just schedule a time to come in and pick it up and they'll have it ready there at the desk for you. We are looking at a online system for bulk item pickups, for sticker orders. It's just, not the, it's kind of complicated because we then have to actually send you a sticker. So we're working on something so that way you can go online and do it. And it might just be as simple as it's an online system. You go online, you pay, and we just mail it out to you. That would reduce the need for people having to physically come into town hall. So that's probably what we'll end up doing. I wish we could have a way that, I wish everyone's printers could just have a sticker printer, but most people actually, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of people don't have printers anymore, which is interesting. I tend not to. There was a period of time where everyone had printers and now folks don't. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's less consumption overall, but we're working on an online system for that. But by all means, contact the clerk's office, email them if you need anything or call them. You can make an appointment, but just shoot them an email with what you need. And sometimes the appointments are simple as if you need a birth certificate and they know that you have the birth certificate, they just say, sure, come in at 10:30, they'll have it ready for you. And you go in the entrance to Memorial Hall, which is the one door we have open for town hall. And there's somebody at a desk there who will hand it to you, and we make it nice and simple. We are incidentally looking into, it may not be up and running until next year, there's machines that we want to put in either a grocery store or like a 24-hour pharmacy where you could pay a town hall bill on one of these machines. So you could pay your tax bill. Most people tend to mail that in or pay it through their escrow. But if you needed to pay a water or light bill, you'd be able to do it. And what that would allow us to do it at a grocery store or a pharmacy, that would allow us to have sort of 80 hours a week that you could go in and pay a bill and make it a little bit more flexible for folks who weren't able to maybe get into town hall. Although you can pay every bill by going through the mail. So I encourage everyone to register to vote if you haven't registered to vote, and to make sure you vote, take advantage of our early voting. Kudos to the clerk's office for a couple of great elections in trying times. They have a lot of work to do ahead of them, so that's why the office will be closed as of 11 most days. There's still, you can still certainly email them or call them. Sticker for the recycling center. Hold on one second. Sticker for the recycling center. Just give the DPW a call, and they'll be able to get you taken care of. And they'll be able to get you a DPW sticker. You just need to show proof of residence. Can we get replacement trash bins? Somebody said we don't have any. There's a delay in ordering them. We've ordered more, but everyone around the country is ordering them at the same time because trash numbers have gone up. So that's why we are short on bins. There's also, you can't get a bin. We're generally not allowing second bins in some cases because it's just not feasible. If you're generating that much trash, you should be focusing on recycling and reducing. Rockland announced they now put pizza boxes in the recycling bin without the paper or any food. Can we? I don't know if it's vendor dependent. I would not do that because if there's grease, it's still causing a problem. So my recommendation is not to do that. They are always changing their processes. The problem that we have is it's everyone's interpretation of grease. So if you had the teeniest little spot of grease, it might be okay. It's not going to cause a lot of contamination. Every pizza shop is different. Every box is made of slightly different cardboard materials. Sometimes they put foil under it. Sometimes they put wax paper under it. Sometimes they put something different on it. So I would continue to throw pizza boxes away. If we hear otherwise, we'll be sure to let everyone know. But it's a matter of it just sort of contaminates the recycling stream. I have a feeling, and this is just a prediction, I could be wrong, that single stream recycling will probably eventually go away. It has more or less killed the industry for recycling and caused a lot more problems than it solved. But that's just my own speculation as the recycling industry continues to turn. Incidentally, a good story on that, when the recycling industry around a year and a half ago really started getting upended, some of the private vendors went to all the towns that they serve and said that these contracts were just not tenable and the cost of recycling was too high and China's standards were too strict. And they asked if they could renegotiate those contracts. And some towns unfortunately said yes and decided to start paying a higher rate. Norwood said no, a contract is a contract. And as a result, we never changed our contract and we didn't end up paying a higher rate. So kudos to Norwood for that. And as Julie said, you can compost your pizza boxes at home. That's new to me. I only have one of the little countertop composters, so that would be a little challenging for me, but I'll give it a shot. A question from Laura: was a flood grant update already discussed? No, but the update on the flood grant is we've completed most of the Tier 1 applications, and I believe a majority of the Tier 2 applications and notification has gone out. We're now working on the Tier 3 applications for notice to get out. It's taken a lot longer than anyone wanted it to, but we've gotten through Tier 1. We've gotten Tier 2 ended up actually being a small pool relatively. And then Tier 3 was a little bit larger because that's also where businesses and multifamilies applied. And we are finding that we don't have funds available for businesses or non-owner occupied homes. We told everyone to apply because we're hopeful if we could. We've received $0 from the state. And it doesn't look like we're going to get money. The governor's office worked with us on allowing us and making sure we could use our own money, the total of $500,000 that we're able to cobble together, but it looks like no cash is actually coming from the state on the grant program. So Laura, if you want, you can email us at managers@norwoodma.gov and we'll just take a look at your application and see where it is. It may have been that it was one of those Tier 3 ones, but by email us just in case to make sure we didn't send the notification letter, either approval or denial, to maybe the wrong address. Still always a human process. Somebody could have typed in the wrong number, but by all means, shoot us an email and we can look into it for you. Oh, drop mine. So that's the update on the flood grant and on the DPW. Incidentally, Household Hazardous Waste Day was last Saturday. It went great, so we are happy with that. We've covered the election. Town meeting will be November 12th and possibly the following Thursday and Monday. We actually going to have somewhat of a lengthy warrant. There's maybe a half a dozen, there's 3 or 4 budget items. There's a couple of either bylaw changes or local adoptions, and then there's quite a few zoning changes. So we're going to be trying to get out the calendar soon for information sessions and getting videos done ahead of time so we can try to get all that information to town meeting members ahead of time. We'll probably do some Facebook Lives. We'll do some go-to-meetings. We'll do stuff recorded on NCM and get it out there to try to get as much information out as we can. But town meeting is just 6 weeks away, which is a little scary because we're always sort of in the rush to the end. The last topic I have to go over with everyone, and then we can, of course, take questions if folks have them, is just a reminder on Halloween. We're confident that if our numbers stay where they are, Halloween can be done safely. We ask everyone to wear masks, and I know I always get a little laugh. It's Halloween, wear a mask. Wear an actual mask in addition to a costume mask. It should be a no-touch situation, so if you want to participate, you go up, open the door. Both the host and the trick-or-treater should be wearing a mask and just deposit things in the kids' bags. Some people, I think it was actually Doris last week, had a great suggestion. They're going to put a few bags out when they see trick-or-treaters so they can come up and it can be sort of a complete no-touch situation. That's fine. We ask that you keep it to your family, keep it small. I know sometimes you like to get together with a bunch of other families in the neighborhood and 6 or 7 kids like to go together or cousins like to go together. We ask that you not do that this year to the extent that you can to keep it safe for everyone. Everything is based on our numbers. We could issue new guidance or different guidance if the state comes out or if we see a real increase in our numbers. That could always change things, so I want to encourage everyone that. We ask, try to avoid the parties, try to avoid haunted houses. We, town hall every year, we do like a little costume contest and dress up thing. And what we're doing is we're just doing it differently. We're going to, if offices want to have a treat for their coworkers, it's got to be sort of prepackaged and people can dress up and we're going to all take pictures and send it in, but we're not going to all gather in one room. So sometimes you just make little adjustments like that. And if you don't feel like partaking in Halloween, just simply don't do it. Shut your front light off, keep your door shut, and simply don't participate if you don't feel safe. Don't force people one way or another to feel safe. Question from Catherine: will town meeting be in the high school gym again? Yes, it will be. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually the high school gym just becomes where we do town meeting from from now on. I know the auditorium seemed more intuitive, but it did seem to work particularly well in the gym. We're probably going to try to have that outside option. Not too many people took that last year. It's going to be November 12th, so it's going to be a little chilly, but it will be similar to how it was in the spring. One, we will ask everyone to prepare as much ahead of time as possible. Little challenging with zoning ordinances, but we're going to try to get as much information out as possible. We may do like an all-day information session the week before or something like that, but in addition to everything we're doing, to just get as much information out there as possible so people can show up informed. And we'll have the chairs spaced out. We'll have separate walk-in stations. We're going to require everyone wear a mask, just as we had done before. It seemed to work in the spring, and we're hopeful that it'll work in November as well. I think last year one of the things we did that worked well was we cut down on a lot of the theater around town meeting, which, I was a town meeting member when I was 18 in my hometown of Randolph. So having other people come and speak and dedications and all that other stuff, if we can skip all that and people can get there on time and we can just start, you'll find, as we did in June, we can move our meeting along quicker without losing our democratic prerogative. Julie, I think you're from Michigan, so maybe the cold doesn't bother you as much as it might other people. If a few folks want to sit outside like they did in July, in November, I don't know. I can't tell you to have a bonfire out there, but I won't tell you not to. No, I'm kidding. No bonfires allowed outside. But I suppose if that's if you folks are going to use it, we'll certainly provide it. But it'll be the same setup that we had in June, where we everyone was in the gym and we had like a TV and a mic outside for some folks. So again, if I think people are going to use it, we can arrange that. One of the reasons, there were a lot of reasons we were concerned about doing a town meeting outside last year was we knew at some point we have to find an indoor model that works, because we knew we'd be having an October or November town meeting, and we might have a February town meeting, so we know we can't do it outside in February. Julie, I'm gonna have to call the moderator if you guys end up ordering pizza out there or something, because I think there was a little bit too much fun had outside last time, and I don't know if all those town meeting snacks were all appropriate. If any of those town meeting snacks were all applicable to an audience under 21. But I'm not saying what happens outside stays outside at town meeting. But we don't want 20 people in the gym and 90 people on the walkway in. But I think you'll get, if 10 or 15 people feel more comfortable being outside in the little cold, I think we'll try to accommodate that to make it go forward. The biggest thing, I think, is preparation for town meeting, and that's on the town staff part to make sure everyone knows what's coming before them. My goal with town meeting is always to make sure that people aren't going into town meeting and sort of learning about something for the first time. Now, that's a shared responsibility with town meeting members and making sure they're doing their research, but on the town side, we got to get that information out there. Some people like to ask questions at town meeting, and that's certainly their right to do it. That's why we're there. Sometimes we, if it's sort of a perfunctory question, I'd rather it be asked ahead of time so you know what you're doing. I always feel that if you're going to have discussion at town meeting, it really should be a debate at town meeting. That's what you're there to do. Do you want to pass the zoning ordinance or not? And sometimes questions come up at town meeting, and that's fine. But sometimes people have a question and then they wait, 6 weeks, and then they get there and they say, well, I want to know what this means. Well, you could have asked that question ahead of time and gotten it done and save town meeting for any actual discussion or any real debate on whether these are the things we want to do. I always feel if we're doing our job right, it should mitigate some of the discussion at town meeting, because folks go in informed as residents. They know what they want to do, and they know how they feel on a particular item, and they can discuss with their neighbors, which is the whole point of democracy. But we shall see. We had a great annual town meeting, but it was also just the budget, which is a fairly standard item every year. This year, we're going to have a couple of local option adoptions, a couple of budget amendments, the capital plan, and then there's probably a half a dozen zoning amendments. So we shall see how long town meeting goes. It'll probably be a couple of nights, but the more prep we can do, the more questions you have once the warrant comes out there, by all means, let us know. We'll get them answered ahead of time. We'll try to do as many information sessions as we can. Maybe we'll do a specific Facebook Live on it. We'll do a go-to-meeting if we have a presentation, particularly on some of the zoning ones, so that way we can get all that information out there ahead of time to everyone. With that, that is the end of my updates. Just to recap our COVID numbers real quick, we're still in the yellow, but we're at 5.6 2, which is lower than last week, and only a 1.2 positivity rate, which is good. So our COVID numbers are where they've been for a while, but still otherwise going well. And we're happy about that, and we want to keep them at least where they are or get better. We certainly don't want them to get worse, but we know most community, not most, but a lot of communities are popping into the red every week. Boston popped into the red, so we may find ourselves there, but we always dig into the data to try to find out if that's the case, why that would be the case. Thank you. Yeah. So, Catherine, let me ask you while I have you the presentations ahead of time. We did, so the FinCom and the school committee did like a video ahead of time, and then we did like 2 go-to-meetings and maybe a Facebook Live on them. So let us know what you thought out of those were the best, because I'd like to do a lot of that ahead of time, so that way town meeting moves a little bit smoother. But if there's particular forums that work, let us know. 2 years ago, we did budget meetings in person. Obviously we can't do that. There's some budget adjustments, but there's no big item. We'll probably be able to cover most of those in like a go-to-meeting or a Zoom or a Facebook Live like this. At some point we've got to experiment with doing the share screen on Facebook Live. Every time we try to do it, it causes a complete disaster and everything shuts down. So we'll have to work on that. But we will endeavor to get as much information out as possible ahead of time for town meetings, so that way everyone goes in knowing exactly what's being voted on. And if anyone has any suggestions for ways to do that, by all means shoot us a message. We're open to anything, however gets the information out there, particularly in a COVID world where it's not as easy to do just open meetings where everyone shows up and asks questions, other than doing them digitally. So with that, we have hit 51 minutes, and I have no further material. Pre-recorded and live. Think the questions was a good mix. We will do both of them. We'll probably have to separate it into sort of the land use and the non-land use, because I think there's 7 different zoning ordinances coming through. And I don't want to make that sound like it's 7 big ones. A couple of them are smaller, either corrections or whatnot. But we'll do formal presentations on those, and then we'll do a couple Q&As. Maybe it'll be a Q&A on the town business and then a Q&A on the land use to try to break it up. But we'll definitely get it out there. If anyone has any other questions, you can let us know. You can also email us at managers@norwoodma.gov, and we will endeavor to answer your questions. And with that, we have reached the end of my questions. So if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and end the live. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and we'll continue to bring these every Thursday. If everyone has questions, or if people like to continue to see them, we'll continue to do them. And hopefully next week we'll still be in the yellow. Maybe we'll even dip down a little bit. And the 6-week march to town meeting is on. So with that, I want to thank everyone. I want to thank you all for joining us and for continuing to be good and practicing your social distancing and wearing your masks. We certainly appreciate it. All right. Thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend and enjoy a beautiful fall weekend. Take care, folks.